Hi, everyone. My name is Ananya Gupta, and I'm from the Youth Culture team. Today, I'm really excited to introduce someone who works in a field where we intersect law, science, and technology. So now, without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to Mary. Hi, Mary.
Hi, nice to meet you.
You too. So I just want to start off this episode with just asking you to tell us a bit about yourself in terms of your background of your education and maybe where you've worked in the past as well.
Sure. Hi everyone. My name is Mary Toth. I work at Next Generation Manufacturing Canada currently. I work as their contracts manager and in-house paralegal. And I'll tell you a little bit about myself, how I got there, specifically sort of my career pathway, if you will. So
Mhm.
to begin with, I went to the University of Guelph for criminal justice and public policy was the program name, and I also double majored in political science. And then once I graduated after those 4 years, like many people in my program, I wrote the LSATs to become a lawyer. And while I felt like I was successful still in writing and in my scores, I learned through that process that I wasn't entirely sure about law school. Mostly, I wasn't sure A, if I could afford it, and then B, if I had the motivation to complete another 4 years. So I decided to then go to Conestoga College to get my paralegal license instead. I thought to myself, if I still want to pursue a law degree after this, then I would have a good base knowledge of law. And
Mhm.
so throughout that time, as I was going to school, to college, I was a law clerk at a boutique real estate law firm, which was really fun. I got to learn a lot about houses, something that benefits me now as I recently became a homeowner. Um, and then when I got my paralegal license after college, I started working at a HR consultancy firm. And I worked in their legal department, specifically working on employment related claims, which was very, very interesting. I learned a lot in that position. And then, really, after that, I got the opportunity. Well, I found out about NGen. And this was around time that COVID started happening, so around 2019. And so I thankfully got the opportunity to work for NGen as an independent contractor at first, which then turned into full time work. So now I'm a full time employee there, and I've been there ever since. So that's sort of my little summary of my career pathway so far. Yeah.
That's amazing. Um, so as a high school student myself and someone who's wanting to inspire, like, and go into law, one thing that kind of intrigued me is that you chose criminal justice and public policy for a reason. Is there any reason why you chose to go into that field when you were in high school and you were applying for universities? Was there a certain path that you had in mind?
If I'm being 100% honest with you, and even this still applies to this day, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to be. I wasn't really sure. I didn't have an end goal in mind. Like, for example, I didn't wake up and was like, I want to be a lawyer. But what I did was kind of pursue my interests and also what I thought I was good at. And so in high school, I really enjoyed law. I really enjoyed those social justice classes that I had exposure
Mhm.
to. And so that's what led me to finding the program at Guelph. Guelph University spoke to me in many ways. I loved their community. They also loved their food, which is a funny, silly reason why I
Yeah.
loved going there. But Guelph hospitality is incredible. And then, yeah, I was also influenced by my peers as well, geographically, a lot of where people were going. And so, for all those reasons, including my interests, that's why I went into that program. But yeah, to answer your question honestly, wholeheartedly, I still don't know what I want to be, but I took kind of an initiative based off of my gut and sort of what I thought I was good at.
Yeah, for sure. I find it funny how you brought up the food at Guelph because I've seen it a lot. That they have good food
It's
for sure.
true. It's true. I can't deny it.
So you also mentioned that like going into public policy was there any way that this helped you in terms of like your jobs right now and how I know you work with contracts at NGen. How did that education serve in your careers after?
It's a great question. I think I learned like a lot of the skills I learned in university are the core skills that I use every day. I always like
Yeah.
to use the like university really opened so many doors for me, and I think the public policy section, allowed me to understand how important your reading and comprehension skills are. Like just
Yeah.
learning how to read a contract, it can be very, very dry, but figuring out what to look for, the key terms, things like that, and even just drafting policy and understanding and interpreting, summarizing, those types of things I learned during the program and were able to sort of bring with me in my real life working experience. And don't get me wrong, a lot of those skills I flexed more so when I was able to actually, use them in the workplace. But learning the theory
Yeah.
behind it and getting exposed to the concepts from a high level, and knowing too that there are so many different policies, and yeah, I think just learning about them from a high level perspective and just getting academic influences as well. Like I had great profs at the University of Guelph that showed
Yeah.
me, hey, these are places you should look for these types of things. And so having that exposure I found so helpful in my everyday working life now.
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing that I've learned a lot is that when going into law school, people say that your undergrad is when you build your skills, in terms of like being successful in the career. So it puts into perspective because I know law itself is a lot of writing, it's a lot of reading, and I'm sure you use that a lot in your career as well. And so like, I'm also hoping to pursue law, and as a woman, I know that there's a lot of adversities when going into it, and I'm not going to be specific and say that it's bound to happen, but has there been any encounterings where you have felt you've felt the presence of that adversity in your career?
Yeah, definitely. I have a few to name, but yeah, definitely being a woman is something that uh I've learned. I didn't realize how much um different you can be treated, I guess, if you will. I always thought I was just like everybody else. But then as you learn
Hmm.
and grow, you notice the comparisons that can be made, and you notice that those biases that are there, unfortunately. Some of the adversities that I've really been exposed to are less I would say specific to my gender at the moment that I can identify. I'm not saying that there isn't, but some of the things that I struggle with or continue to or had struggled with is also just lack of industry or experience in general. I think while it may seem like a disadvantage to some employers, I also think it presents an opportunity to learn and grow. So I think that's always hard
Yeah.
coming out of, like, I know you're just going into college or university, but like even just exiting college and university, sometimes I think that can be a disadvantage that people may see. But I actually think it's a really cool, fresh perspective. And I think it's great that younger professionals can approach challenges, creatively, like just using creative aspects and being more enthusiastic. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's a challenge that I've been exposed to for sure, is sort of that lack of experience, but it can be made up in other ways. Another thing too, I would say, is ageism is something that I've been exposed to. And unfortunately, it's a reality for young professionals in the workplace. So, for example, given low level tasks and not being challenged or given opportunities to grow. Um, I look at this though as an opportunity to show others that doesn't matter how old you are. If you're a hard worker, if you're dedicated, and you come to work with a positive attitude, then it shouldn't matter. But there's that adversity I find, and also limited networks as well. Building a professional
Mhm.
network takes time. But I think young professionals can leverage things like social media and online platforms to connect with others in their industry. And so I think this can lead to valuable mentorship opportunities and collaborations. But I think everything will grow with time. But yeah, to answer your original question, in terms of like gender and sexuality, I know that's something that I think is unfortunate that it is prevalent
Yeah.
within the industry that we work in. But I will say there are incredible mentorship opportunities. I have amazing women in my life that are in law, and I just always try to hold on to those relationships, and also just try to stay positive. Seek support through these
Yeah.
mentorship opportunities, learn from your mistakes, be open to feedback. But it's good to hold place for those things like you were mentioning, and even in this podcast right now, I think it's important to note them.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned something about how, not having a background specifically in science can be
Yeah.
deemed as like maybe is not like an advantage per se, but I'm sure like working at NGen, it is an advanced manufacturing company, and most people probably do have have a science background. But how have you like enjoyed this challenge? What have been some things that you've been able to learn along the way at NGen?
So, yeah, I think it's important to just emphasize that you can be something other than an engineer when working for a
Yeah.
manufacturing company. There are many different types of people that make up the company,
Hmm.
and that can include like management, sales, logistics. So I know, like you were mentioning, having those technical skills, they definitely come with like advantages, of course,
Yeah.
but I think I can, like, I'd like to think that I'm a good example of this. I think that there are many young people that can find a fulfilling career that matches their skills and interests regardless of their background and education. And so, yeah, I really think that by working at NGen, I've realized that it's not a one size fits all approach, you know? You
Yeah.
can find your place anywhere you want to be, and as long as people, make room for you to grow. And I think that that's really important as well. So, yeah, yeah.
I liked how you mentioned how it's not limited, like, in any field, realistically, there's a lot of, like, stakeholders part of it, and I know, like, having a legal professional in any career is very important in terms of restrictions and policies, and so one thing that I was thinking of is how have you seen technology and law intersect, and have you seen any changes in this field, and how this field has adapted to technology? Because it's quite interesting how, like, things are always evolving, but how does, like, our legal field catch up to that?
Mm, that's a really great question. And I don't know if I could fully answer it because of that like lack of industry experience adversity that I even mentioned. I know I haven't been around long enough, I think, to see the trends grow, but I will
Yeah.
say I learn something new every day in my position. There are so many different types of legal agreements that I'm sure I'm still not aware of that I'm learning to adopt. That are like synergists to technologies, like and how they're adapting as well. And so with the projects that I've been exposed to at NGen, I see so many different types of relationships. And so that means I need to have a template or a guide or a tool to help draft these types of relationships for them. And so I think the most important thing, and I think what we really embody at NGen is, novel, new flexibility. And so as long as I think that I have that mindset and those in my department and at NGen have that, I think those types of technologies and these sort of like law or legal intersections can continue to be like married and move forward hand in hand.
Mhm.
But I will say there's of course very traditional relationships that are still being fostered. And so it's also respecting the history, the past, but moving forward and knowing, hey, like this template doesn't always have to be like this, or this guide or
Mhm.
this relationship can be different because this technology is different. And so I think it's just being open to that. I would for I think that that's the best answer I can give right now just because I haven't been around too long, but yeah.
Yeah. I had a really quick question. So I've been able to look at some of the projects that Engine actually, like, they work with and they've partnered with, and a lot of them
Mhm.
are really innovative, but I'm sure, like, when you're going through contracts, you're probably looking at these projects. What are some policies or some things that you have to take into consideration when accepting such projects? And what are some, like, contingency factors per se that you have to, as your role, you have to take into consideration?
Yeah, so, at NGen, we provide funding for different types of challenges, if you will. So
Mhm.
there's very different ones. There's electrical vehicles, there's sustainable manufacturing. There's so many different ones. So I guess it depends on what type of challenge. So like your lens or your scope of what sort of agreements that you're making with these projects has. So there's different requirements or there's different qualifications for each pipeline or each stream or challenge, which is
Yeah.
number one, the first thing to consider. But um, if I could think of the certain things that I consider in these agreements, So one of the requirements that we ask of projects during our funding process is to make a collaborative agreement amongst their project consortium themselves. So we have what we call a master project agreement that dictates our relationship with the projects, but then we also ask them to make an agreement amongst themselves. And so
Okay.
what we want to make sure that they consider are really common things, I would say for me, but not all people think that they're common. Like, I mean, hey, at the end of the day, everyone's learning something new. So we want to
Yeah.
make sure, for example, they consider what happens to their project assets after the project has ended.
Mhm.
If they're jointly owned, who's going to own them? Are they still going to be jointly owned after the project ends? Like all the materials that are used in the project, are they going back to their original owners? So a lot of intellectual property is also considered in this, and this is something that we use as an educational piece for these collaborative agreements is, hey, what are you going to do if everything goes sour? Really is the question that we
Yeah.
want to ask them because these agreements, everyone's happy to come together, but they're really made for when things go kind of south, which is unfortunate, but that's just the reality of the situation. So we try to ask them these types of questions like, hey, what if this happens? What if your partner something happens with the project partner? What if they need to be replaced? What if you need to add a project partner? So we try to
Hmm.
ask these types of questions to get them thinking about, what will happen if. So I think if is the big questions that like we ask.
Okay.
They usually start with if. So yeah, I would say that's probably the best answer I could give you there.
The what if is a really big thing in this career from what I'm getting.
Yeah, I
So I
think
had a
so.
quick question. I had a quick question in terms of how technology it's quite evolving and it's evolving really fast. In your perspective, like how do you think the legal field catches up to that? Like how do you think they make sure that they understand the extent and the power of such technologies?
Oh man. I think that my involvement at NGen, I would say, is like the less traditional legalese. Like, I'm not in the
Okay.
law firm, for example. And I
Hmm.
know many people in the legal field might start out there, is where I started in a real estate law firm. And so I do think that traditionally, and this isn't a knock on anything, but I do think that they're quite dated in terms of the hierarchy, the structure, and the way like workplace flows. And so I think it may take some time for a traditional firm to catch up with where we are in technology right now. That's just my 2 cents on that. And I wish I had a solution or solutions to sort of make that better. I'd have to think about that a little bit more since I've been so far removed from that environment. But as
Yeah.
someone who works in the legal department for a non-for-profit, it is not necessarily constrained by the same hierarchy. I feel like it's a really positive future. I feel like again, if we continue to have that flexible mindset and say, and ask the what if questions, but be open to other what if questions that are asked to us, I think
Yeah.
that I think that we're going to be in a good place. And I really think it comes to with younger generations and new generations and new learnings. As long as we're open to those types of learnings, I think that we'll continue to progress in the right direction.
I love that. I love how you're really positive about it because, there's a lot of like people think of it as a danger sometimes. Like they're like, oh, technology can go wrong this way or this way. But looking at the optimistic side of it, it's quite cool to see like the what if doesn't have to necessarily be something negative, but it can be something positive. So
Yeah.
I'm actually really interested on like what your stance is in like the legal field. Is there certain issues and certain things that you wish to explore in the legal field in the future? I know you've gone from real estate and then you've gone from technology, but supposedly you have a 5-year plan. Do you see what you envision yourself working as?
Ooh. I think I'll always be, the legal world has provided such a great foundation for me to get to where I am today. I can't envision myself steering away from it fully. It's always going to take me to where I need to go. Um,
Mhm.
so, but in terms of changes that I'd like to see in the legal field, I'd love to see more young people in the legal field that I can work with regularly. I'd love to see more people, some like diversity, just more in the legal field as well. Different types of people, different types of personalities. I think that there's a stereotype that a lot of people are, type A individuals within law. And
Yeah.
I think it's great to have a little bit of diversity there too. I think that if someone was to say, like I've had a couple people say to me like, "Oh, you're in law? You don't seem like you're very, I don't know, just like happy." And I know that's not always the case that
Yeah.
some law firms can come across as very intimidating, I think. And I don't think I have an intimidating bone in my body. And so I think that there is some stereotypical cookie cutter personality types. Don't get me wrong, and I think it's okay, of course, but I'd love to just see it grow to be it doesn't like anyone can be in law as long as they have an interest in it and as long as they're driven to learn more about the subject matter. Um, and I hope that that goes with other subjects too, not just law, but I'm really hoping that I can continue to see uh, more younger people in law and enjoying it in a way that they feel like they can make a difference. And I think a lot of people going into law want to make a difference, like a tangible difference. I know I do.
Yeah.
And so I hope that there's opportunities that are given to younger people too to feel like they're making an impact as well.
Yeah, for sure.
I know I'm
When you
talking a
said
lot. I feel like I'm
digital,
going many different directions. I apologize.
no, I love everything that you're saying, and especially when you said the intimidating factor. The first thing I thought of was Suits. A lot of people think of like Harvey Specter and Mike Ross and Jessica Pearson.
He's like stone cold looking, and I'm just
Yeah,
like, I don't represent that. And here I am. I feel like I'm still successful. And so yeah, I think it's important to just show the different faces of law, right?
yeah, I love that. I love that. So in terms of like for youth, you talked a lot about like empowering the youth and getting them into this field in terms of like having a new perspective. How do you think the youth can, explore this field at a young age? Is there certain ways that you've seen that the youth can get involved in our community?
Yeah, I mean, when I was in high school, I don't know why it's slipping my brain right now, but there was like a course I could take that actually exposed me to like as if I was in small claims court. Like it's almost like you are able to sort of situate like a litigation scenario. And you can get
Mhm,
exposure to, I know, a certain piece of law. So it's not all of law is litigation, of course, but I think just having programs or just places in the education system where younger people can test the waters without it being a crazy commitment. I think that that's something that's great. I think if there's some workplace programs where people like the co-op opportunities, internship opportunities, where you can go in and see what's actually happening in a legal department of a business. I think those things are really, really great to have more exposure to
mhm.
things like that. And again, like just mentorship opportunities, like reaching out on LinkedIn and finding people that you're like, oh, they're doing really cool things. I wonder if they'll be able to talk. Like I think I would encourage any young person to utilize those types of resources to see if it's their cup of tea. And I think
Yeah.
one of my really good friends of mine gave me this advice, and it's sometimes you can be discouraged figuring out if it's not what you like, but that's just one step closer to figuring out what you like. And so I think it might be
Yeah.
discouraging to think like, oh, it didn't work out for me. But hey, now you're one step closer to knowing what you do like. And that's okay. You don't have to like everything. And so
Mhm.
I would encourage people too, like sort of the decision I made, like I don't think I want to be a lawyer, but I'm so glad I became a paralegal and it brought me to where I was and I just followed my intuition. And it's okay not to like something.
Yeah. I was thinking of this, in philosophy class, we learned about, everything happens for a reason and how some people think it's not true. But I personally believe that. I think you kind of touched upon that, like maybe one thing happens for a reason for you to open another door and see if it
Yeah.
just isn't worth for you. And I also like when I was thinking of what you said about like exposing young children, I realized that like even courthouses in high school, my teacher was able to take us to a courthouse and it was like open. I think a lot of people were just able to come in for free. And I think that was my first interaction with law. I saw a cross examination. And so it was a police officer and it was a lawyer and it was really going back and forth. So it was really interesting to see that.
Yeah, totally. I think it's easy to forget that certain cases are like available to the public. Like you can even just go online and look at like records, and it's just knowing what to search for and figuring out those tools. And yeah, I think it's really cool that you're able to do that. I was able to do that in college with a few classes, and it's really interesting. So yeah, I think it's great that you're exposed to that.
You touched upon LinkedIn, which I was really interested about. What do you see as like the power of networking in our day and age? What do you think that how much networking can help you in today's age?
I think it's so powerful. I think networking is incredible. I think that using tools like LinkedIn or even going to workshops, going to seminars, going to, anything of that nature, I think it's so powerful because the more I mean, you don't know what you don't know. And then when you go into it, you can kind of expand your horizons. And I think making
Yeah.
connections, like tangible connections, is so important. I mean, I was only able to make this connection with you because I was able to connect with you culture through LinkedIn. And so I think
Yeah.
it can be intimidating sometimes putting yourself out there, but I think those types of tools are so important because again, it's like opening those doors and seeing what's inside and being curious. I would just say never stop being curious. And these types of platforms help you drive that curiosity. So yeah, I think it's so important. I think we're moving away from those, traditional your cards with your name on it. Like we're not doing that anymore, I don't think. I think
Yeah.
we're saving trees. Like we're not doing that. And I think LinkedIn's the next best thing, right?
Yeah, for sure. Especially for youth, I think like what trend I'm seeing is that a lot of kids my age, they're all on it and they've been able to leverage that platform so well that, it's like as we grow older, the younger population becomes more educated about this and becomes more powerful in terms of like transitioning from high school to university and becoming an adult, which is quite beautiful. Like that one platform has the
Mhm.
power to do that.
Right. And I will honestly say I only started using it routinely within the last, I would say, since NGen, so the last 4 years. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, why didn't I use this before?
Yeah,
Because it's not only like a networking tool, but it's a tool that you can use like to apply to jobs. It's a tool you can use
yeah,
for learning. There's like a LinkedIn learning portion of it. So if you want to learn modules and about really any topic,
I
um,
know.
so yeah, it's like more than meets the eye. So I would encourage any person to just go check it out if they can, because I think it's an amazing tool.
So as we come closer to the end of this, and in true Kim Cooper style, she often asks if anyone wants to share words of wisdom. And I want to extend that to you. Do you have any words of wisdom for the people that are listening in today and how what to inspire them into going into this field and things to look forward to?
Oh man. Um, I would say, remember that overcoming workplace adversities and figuring out who you are too takes time and effort. But with the right mindset, with the right strategies, you can move forward and achieve anything. You can achieve anything and don't let anybody stop you. Just, keep smiling. Keep smiling.
I love that. All right. Thank you so much, Mary, for coming out today. And I want to thank all of our listeners as well for being here today. And stay tuned for any other episodes of Youth Culture. And it's Ananya signing off.
Thank you so much.